Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I thought I'd do something new today. I'm outside. I thought I'd come out here to speak to you about the new life that Jesus brings. So I'm going to find a nice place, a nice spot with a view, and then I'm going to talk to you for a bit about that. So I found a spot down by the shore here in Appledore. I thought this was a great place. Jesus often spoke to people from the shore, so I figured I'd do that as well too today. So, talking about the new life that Jesus brings, I probably much like you, I love new things. I like getting new clothes. I like new gadgets. I like making things. I like the smell of kind of fresh paint when something's new. It's really kind of good, and I think the idea of new life is something that we all need. Life can get difficult, isn't it? Life can get tough, and the idea of new life is a good thing. I don't know if you've seen those movies where things for someone who perhaps it's all getting too much and they've got themselves into a real mess, and it seems like the only solution is to fake their own death, move to South America and start again. And that's probably not the best way to deal with things. But the point is our attempts to kind of make ourselves new often fizzle out. They often new things don't seem to stay new, and even the guy that moves to South America fakes his own death. Even his old life will catch up with him eventually. But Jesus, however, promises to give us new life, to bring new life. He says in John 10:10 in the Bible, it says that I have come that they may have life and that they might have it to the full, have an overflowing kind of life, an abundant kind of life. That's the promise, and a life beyond death, a life beyond this life that we know here. Jesus promises to bring new life to each one of us that will actually last forever. I'm interested in that kind of life. I'm interested in a life that will last and endure, and I hope you are as well. And recently I've really enjoyed watching the TV series The Chosen, which is all about the life of Jesus and the disciples and the journey that they all went on with him. And those that followed Jesus, those that went and responded to his invitation, they've discovered new life. Jesus called very ordinary, sometimes people with messy lives. Sometimes some of the disciples weren't the people that we would have chosen, probably if we were in charge. But God chose ordinary, broken, messed up people, and he invited them into this journey with him. And on this journey, they discovered new life. There's something about Jesus that when you follow him, you find new life. So Peter, he was one of these disciples. He was a pretty feisty individual, and but after he'd been on this journey for a little while, Jesus turned to him and asked him the question. He said, "Who do you say I am? Who do you say that I am?" And Peter had obviously come to this understanding. He'd come to realize that he'd seen the miracles Jesus had done. He'd heard the words he said. He'd just seen how he was, and it impacted him so much. He was convinced that he was the Son of God. And that belief about Jesus began to transform Peter's life. He began to discover who he was. God began to bring the best out of him, and he discovered his purpose in life. His part to play in this big picture that God is playing out through for humanity, through this world, this universe that we live in. God's got a plan and a purpose for each one of us. And what Jesus actually invites us all into is a new way to be human. That might sound a bit weird, but Jesus, explains it like this. He said, you must be born again. You must start life again. There's not always positive connotations to that phrase, but Jesus was the first one to actually use it to describe what new life was like with him. God's Spirit joins with our spirit if we invite him to, and a new life begins. A new life is born within us. We begin life again with God on the inside, with Jesus on the inside. We're no longer, our old life dies. Our old life just on our own comes to an end. It finishes, it dies, and we're no longer of the race of Adam. We're a new creation, we have a whole new life. It's quite amazing if you think about it. And it is not like the guy who faked his own death. Our old life really is dead. It's not going to catch up with us. We're not going to It's not going to turn around and bite us later on. You know, we leave it behind and we start again with Christ, with Jesus on the inside. Paul in the Bible, he describes it like this. He says, my old self has been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. So I live in this earthly body by trusting in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. So what's this new life like that Jesus brings? Well, basically, the defining factor is it's life with God. It's life with Christ on the inside. And he actually lives out his life through us. He brings good things out of us. He changes us from the inside out. He brings the best out of us, you know, as opposed to life without God, which is where we all start out. You know, and it's amazing that actually this new life in Christ, you know, we begin to move from falling short of God's best for us, falling short of the glory of God, which is how the Bible puts it. You know, God had intended us to live lives filled with good things, with you know, the blessing of God and the favor of God on our lives, and to really shine, you know, for him. But we've all kind of missed it. We've all fallen short. We all, you know, sin has a way of tripping us up and limiting us and restricting us from being the best that God's called us to be. So we move from that kind of life to a life where it actually says we are heirs of the glory of God, that God brings glory into our lives. He brings his presence, he brings his love, he brings his peace, his grace, his goodness, and we begin to change from the inside out, and we become better. We become the best us that we can be. We journey to that. It's a complete thing. It's a complete work that he does in us, but it takes a while for it to work out into the whole of our lives. Sometimes it's not obvious from the outside that we're changed from the inside. I remember just in my experience, you know, I definitely felt something change, and people said there was a kind of a glow about me, and I was smiling, and seemed happy and more at peace, you know. But sometimes it's a bit more gradual. Sometimes we don't see it straight away, but we can take great encouragement from the journey of the disciples. You know, they just stuck with Jesus. They hung around with him. They listened to him. They followed him. And as they did that, as they spent time with Christ, they found new life. They found, you know, a new way to be human. You know, they discovered that God had good things in store for them, and they discovered who they were, who God had made them to be. You know, so many other things try and define us, don't they, in life? So many other perhaps experiences we have, or things that people have said. But actually, when God comes into our life, he begins to tell us who we really are. He knows your name. He knows us. He knows you. He gets you. And he wants to bring the best out of you. And I think as you journey, as you follow him in that way, you know, we can actually discover what we're here for. We can find greater purpose in life, greater clarity, our part to play in the big picture. That's certainly been my experience. You know, as I've embraced this idea of Jesus coming by his Spirit into my life, and a new life began. And it was only then that I really discovered who God had made me to be. You know, I was trying to figure that out, and I was trying to you know, define that and work that out. But actually, it was only as I stuck close to Jesus, that I figured that out. And it's become clearer what I'm here for. I'm still on the journey, still learning, but I don't want to do it on my own. And that's the beautiful thing that Jesus invites us into. So, you know, my question to you today is, will you join this adventure? Will you respond to this invitation to do life with Jesus? To begin again, to be born again, to follow Christ, to let your old life go, to be forgiven, to be restored, and to follow Jesus. You know, he wants you to come on that adventure. It's not without challenge, it's not without difficulty and sacrifice, like many ways in life. But the difference is God is with you, and God is inside you, and he helps us along the way. And perhaps, you know, for those watching today who've already discovered this life, perhaps you've been on this journey for many, many years. There was something Paul said in that verse that we read, where he says, this life I now live in this earthly body, I live by trusting in the Son of God, or by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. You know, this was Paul's outlook. He said, this life I now live in my body, this life I now live on earth, in other words, this normal life that I live, Christ actually he's in me. So I'm going to live trusting in him. I'm not going to live trusting in myself. And what were the two things that he made his priority? It was him who loved me. He was putting his faith in the love of Jesus. And I want to encourage you to do that today. Put your faith in the love of Jesus for you today. And the second thing, he said, who gave himself for me. He was putting his faith in God's desire or God's commitment to supply us, to give to us. You know, he gave himself to us, and he doesn't stop. So that really struck me this week as I was reading that verse. You know, that was Paul's encouragement. This life I now live, I live by faith in the Son of God, faith in his love and faith in his supply. You know, God's not coming to us wanting to take from us. He's coming to us to give to us. Even as a Christian, if you've been there for many, many years, that's his desire. So as we do this, as we center our lives around Jesus and as we look to him, it's really there that we discover new life and that we can continue the journey. So I hope that's helped you today, and I hope that's interesting for you today, and we'd love to just help you on that journey in other ways too. So be blessed today, and I'll see you in a minute. Back on the stage, I think. All right, bye for now.